Sean from Ace Appliance in Toledo, Ohio. Welcome back to another in-home diagnostic video brought to you by ApplianceVideo.com. So we're going to replace the fresh food evaporator today. First thing that we're going to have to do is we're going to have to access the top compartment where the compressor is. We'll take off the cosmetic cover. There's a metal frame that holds the cosmetic cover on that we'll take off then. And there's another metal bracket that helps to reduce noise from the compressors running that we'll have to take off. And then we'll get to the fresh food compressor. We'll remove the refrigerant from that. Then we can access the refrigerator compartment, remove all the shelves, remove a bracket that prevents the back cover from being helps it be held in place. Remove that, remove the light cover. Then we'll remove the back panel. Then we can access our evaporator. We'll unbraze it and unmount it, take it out and put in the new stuff. All right, we're going to go ahead and remove the top panel. We're just going to grasp each side, lift it straight up, pull the bottom out and drop it down, and it comes off. It is a little heavy, so we just want to make sure you have a good grasp of it. And we can set that to the side. Now we have our metal bracket here. There's screws going up from the bottom, one here, and one here, which we're going to remove. Then we also have the two, one here and one here, that hold it in place. I'm going to take the bottom ones off first. That way the top two will still hold it in place. All right, now we can go ahead and remove the two up top. And when we go to do our last one, we just want to make sure we support the bracket so it doesn't fall down and hit us. Now it's off and I can remove it off. All right, now there are two screws that hold this in place. Go ahead and remove the first one here. Okay. And then we have one on the right side right here. So we have those removed. Now we can go ahead and grasp the whole frame or bracket. Just pull it out. And then we set it to the side. Now we have access to all of our compressors and sealed system components up top. Okay, so now we're going to take the refrigerant that's remaining in there out. To do that, on this particular unit, our fresh food compressor is the one on the right side. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the little cap on our access port. I'm going to hook my gauges up to it, which they are already hooked up to my reclaimer. I'm just going to go ahead and screw this on. I'm going to go ahead and turn my reclaimer on. It will be noisy. I may turn the microphone off so that way we don't have to hear that on the video. And we'll go ahead and fire it up. Okay, we're done reclaiming. It's been on there for about 5 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and shut the reclaimer off. So the reclaimer's off, still holding in the vacuum. So we're good to go. We're going to go ahead and disconnect our gauges, and then we're going to start to disassemble the fresh food compartment. All right, so I'm just going to disconnect. And we're all set with that. Okay, so we're going to open up the fresh food right here. Now all the shelving in here is going to have to be removed. So we're just going to take it out, and I'll start with the top. Right, got our basket here. All these are going to come out in the same exact way. That shelf. Okay, we're going to remove our light cover right now. So there's a little slot in the back here. I'm just going to bend it out, and then it comes out. Okay, so we're going to remove this little cover here. There's two screws, one here, and then one over here on the left side. And then our little bracket will come off. All right, there's one more screw holding this panel in, and it's dead center from here back. Now we can't get it in the shot because of how things are placed in the kitchen, but there's just one more. You can't miss it. So we're going to get down here. Got the screw. Now with that out, we're going to be able to remove this back panel. It's hinged at the bottom, so I'm just going to grab it from the top and pull towards me. And then I can lift it straight up. Be careful not to cut yourself. So we got it out, which now we have exposed our fresh food evaporator. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and I want to pull my baskets out here at the bottom. I'm going to lift up this top just a little bit, just to give me a little bit more access, because we have our control back here. I'm going to go ahead and remove that out of the bracket. There's a line that goes up here that's been bent into the evaporator, like this one. We're going to get that out. I'm going to do the same for the other side of the control. Remove them both, and I'm just going to dangle them up here, maybe just wrap them into the wire a little bit, just to keep them out of the way, because this is what I need to work on. So we'll go ahead and do that now. So I have both of my lines here, and I'm just going to go ahead and, like I said, there's wiring up top here, and I'm just going to put them in the wiring. Okay, so we need to access where our braze joints connected to the line coming into our evaporator. So this needs to be slid up.
But it was that, and it was the dimmer switch in the dining room was bad too.
So I just go ahead and just rip that tape off there, and then now we can. Okay, so I just got this like styrofoam stuff up, which has exposed our two lines. We have a connection here that we're going to unbraze, and a connection here, so that way we get our new evaporator, we can connect from there. All right, on here there are 4 screws that mount this evaporator to the back wall. 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'm going to go ahead and remove those screws. That way I can get the evaporator out, and I can put a heat shield behind here, so that way I don't damage the refrigerator when I unbraze and braze. So I'm going to go ahead and remove those. All right, so now this is loose. The evaporator will come out, providing me access to get a heat shield back there. All right, so I got my heat shield. Basically, I just have a piece of scrap metal from a different appliance. I'm going to stick it behind my evaporator. There's no right or wrong way. Basically, it just helps me to not damage the refrigerator. Now that I have that like that, I can go ahead and turn on my torches, heat up the metal, and separate it from the line coming down. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and light my torches. Not exactly what I was hoping for. Actually burnt through the tubing, so. Alright, now we'll try the cap tube here, which should take a lot less heat because it's much smaller. Alright, so we got one done the right way, one done the wrong way. All right, my lines there that I just were trying to unbraze, I got a wet rag. I'm just going to put it on it, and I'm just making sure that everything's cooled down enough that I can work on it. And then that way I can better address my what I'm going to have to do with that one line that didn't want to unbraze for me. Looks like we're just going to cut it out. All right, so they're definitely cooled enough to handle. I'm going to get my copper cutter, and I'm just going to trim off this large piece that didn't unbraze for me. All right, so I got my lines here. The cap tube here is fine. I'm going to just kind of gently bend that out of the way. I'm going to try to get this large chunk off with my copper cutter. I'm trying to get it as close to the large part as possible. We'll see how this works out. I may have to go up another, 3/4 of an inch or so, but I'm just going to start running our tubing cutter around. I like to do it slow, so that way I don't round and make sure I don't crimp the copper. So find that to be very important. That way I can connect my tubing a little bit easier. All right, so we got that cut off now. And then what we're going to do next is we're going to clean up both of our fittings, both of our ends there, because they are discolored. That way they'll bond better with the new braze joint. So I'm going to go here, got my fittings, just trying to clean up any impurities that are on there that may cause a problem when we reconnect. About as good as I'm going to get this one. I'm going to go over to the larger tube, which is easier to actually clean because it's more sturdy. Alright, we got that one cleaned up pretty well there. So now I'm actually going to grab my my new evaporator, position it where it needs to be. I want to make sure that this line is still long enough, since we had to cut a little bit off for it to meet into our evaporator. Alright, so I'm just taking they put these in here so that way any debris or moisture doesn't get inside there once they manufacture from the factory. So we come off. So obviously we have copper here. They already made the copper to steel connection for us right here. So we can just use our regular brazing rod to connect. So it's just copper to copper, which is what the other lines are. So now I'm just going to put this in position and see if, like I said, our other line is going to fit for us. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and put this in position here. Obviously, it appears good from first glance that it will definitely line up. We should be completely fine. So that's good news for us. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to lower my evaporator down and just make sure that our tubing is the correct size, that it's going to fit properly. So I'm just going to go ahead and try to insert it so it fits in there nice and snug. Our cap tube is going to be the exact same way. So this is a very good sign for us. We don't have to make any kind of adjustments to the connections. So I'm going to take that out. I'm going to put some flux, that's the key word. We'll put some flux on our joints to aid in the brazing. Put our heat shield back behind there. And I'm going to braze our joints. And we'll go from there. All right, so we'll go ahead and just pull our tube out. I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to put my heat shield back in position now. Our little foam piece fell down. I'm going to try to wrap it back up at the top here so that way it doesn't fall down, because it will catch on fire. Now that we have this here, I'm going to go ahead and flux our two lines. And there's no right or wrong way. You're just going to throw some on there. Too much won't cause any problem. It's just going to, most of it's just going to melt and run off anyways. So we got it on there. Now I'm actually going to go ahead and try to fit my lines in. My cap tube's a little longer. I'm going to start with that one. So we're just going to try to bend my bar up out of the way. Insert my cap tube. It's just supposed to just slide down. It's not sliding down. Oops. Alright, since it's not sliding down, I probably have a little bit of the brazing stuff on there from our last one. I can either try to clean it up some more, or I can just try to cut it closer to the other one. I'm probably just going to cut it, and that way they're about the same length. It makes my job a little easier. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this since it won't go in easily, and cut it a little bit shorter. Alright, so since it didn't fit, I'm just going to pull it out, and all of our stuff stays here. I got my tube here, and I'm just going to trim it up here a little bit. I'm going to use either some diagonal cutters. I also have my wire strippers actually work pretty well because it's very thin copper, And I'm going to try to eyeball it, be as close to in length as our other connection. And so basically I'm just trying to start by scoring a line on there. You can see it's kind of clean and that point there, so I know that, you know, we got at least a small enough diameter to hit something. Now you don't want to go too drastic. It's a tiny tube. Will definitely kink, close up, and that defeats your purpose of what you're trying to do today. Alright, I got a little score in there. I'm just going to see how I can actually just break it off. And here's our cap tube. Since it's so small, it's so easy to crimp. By doing this, we can actually see that the hole is still present, that we didn't push down too hard and close it off, which would give us a restriction. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to bend it down. I got to clean this up again because it's all dark. So we'll clean it up with the sandpaper, and then we'll go ahead and reflux and put our unit together. Alright, so I'm going to just go gently bend my tube down. Just going to clean it up. Alright, looks like we got it pretty clean. We're going to go ahead and reflux both our joints and then connect it to the evaporator. Alright, so we're just going to apply flux again. Since I rubbed a lot of it off on this one, I'm just going to add a little bit more. Then we're going to go ahead and insert our tube into our evaporator. Alright, so we got everything good to go here. Just going to go ahead and insert our tubing. Maybe insert my cap. Come on, cap tube. There we go. There, now I feel confident about that there. Now we can go ahead. I'm going to move that styrofoam that keeps falling down, try to get it back up again, make sure our heat shield is in position, and we're going to go ahead and braze our joints together. Alright, without moving our evaporator too much so our connections don't fall out, I'm just going to try to... Control came out of my wire jam. Alright, we're a hot mess. Now we got our heat shield. I just want to make sure that it's... So hopefully it stays in that position, that way I can shoot straight back. I can go ahead and get my brazing rod ready. Alright, so I got my, I'm going to light my torch. I put a bend in my brazing rod. I just find it's easier to braze that way. So I'm heating up my joint where I want the copper to flow. Put my brazing rod back here and let the heat do the work so it'll draw it in. Alright, we got one done. We're going to go on to the next one. I'll bend my brazing rod a little bit more so it's easier to get to the back. Heat it up just like we did the other fitting. This one requires a lot less heat. It's a much smaller connection. We want to be sure not to burn through our cap tube. Almost got it. It's starting to melt right now. Alright, so we got that done. Shut off my torches. I can go ahead and now with my inspection mirror, I'm going to inspect my joints. So my head may block your view a little bit as I get back there, but I just want to make sure that I have good braze joints, which that appears to be, because the back I can't really see. And in theory, you should always have a good braze joint, as long as you keep the heat source on one side on a tube this small, and you start from the back, because that heat's just going to draw that brazing rod into it. Thus, like I said, most of the time you should always have a good joint. So at this point here, we can go ahead and hook our reclaimer up. I'm going to draw the unit into a vacuum, and that way I'm going to be another way for me to double check to make sure I don't have a leak. All right, so I'm connecting my gauges back up to our service port on the compressor. I'm going to open up my gauges, and then I'm going to go ahead and turn my reclaimer on. You can also use your vacuum pump at this point. Basically, we're just creating a vacuum in the machine, which then we can close it off after it's been running and monitor our gauges and make sure it hasn't been leaking. All right, right here on the big blue numbers with a little bit of green, you can see it's at 0. When we turn the reclaimer on, it's going to go down and creep towards 30, which is going to show that it's in a vacuum. We're going to leave that run. That's going to eliminate moisture when it's in the vacuum, but it's going to cause anything in there to boil based on temperature. So we're going to remove moisture in the process as well as create the vacuum. We'll leave that run for a few minutes, and then once we get that to temperature or let it run, we'll then turn it on or close my gauges, turn off the reclaimer, and then we'll monitor to make sure that there is no leak, that it doesn't start to seep up. Okay, right now I'm going to shut off my gauges. That's basically going to create a sealed system with my refrigerator. So I shut that off there. I can turn off my reclaimer at this point. And basically we're just monitoring to make sure that it stays in the, around that same mark where it's at now, which is maybe slightly above 30. So it can fluctuate slightly because the pressure is based on temperature. So the temperature could change with the reclaimer being off and such. So as long as it stays in the same vicinity, we'll monitor it for a few minutes here, make sure it looks good. As long as it stays there, then we're going to go ahead and proceed with the rest of the repair. Okay, as we can see now, it hasn't moved hardly at all. So basically verifies we have no leak in the system. We can go ahead now and remove our reclaimer out of here. We can go ahead and start with the installation of the evaporator, actually mounting it to the back wall and putting everything back together. Okay, now it's been roughly 5 minutes. Basically, the gauge is in the same position. So we're going to go ahead and reinstall everything at this point. Okay, so we can go ahead and remove our heat shield out of the way, which I'll do now. Just going to grab it, slide it out of there. Obviously, we're not heating anything up, so we have no use for it any longer. On this evaporator, it's a new design evaporator. Instead of the fins being on the front, they're on the back. So before we can mount this, our temperature controls have to be mounted in position in there. Now, I find it's very difficult to get a good crimp on here to hold those in place. So what I actually use are small zip ties, and I'll put one at the top and the bottom of each line to hold it in position. And I have a much better result with that rather than trying to crimp that steel down. So we're going to go ahead and say untangle our controls from the top. And on the paperwork that comes with our unit here, it shows you roughly where to put those thermostats. There's no exact science to it. Just get it as close as what the image shows you. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and we'll say untangle, if that's even what we're doing. They weren't tangled to begin with. From the image, this one here is going to go down through the right side. So based on, it still has to clip. There's a clip down on the bottom that holds this in place. So based on the length of the tube that allows, I'm going to get it as far to the right as I can. The one on the left is much more simple. It's just going to go right down to the bottom there. So I'm going to roughly, the one on the left is just going to kind of stick it back and put it in position, the rough position. I'll start with that one because that will be my easiest one. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and start to slide this down in the, well, actually I'm going to straighten it out first so it's easier to work with. And then I'll go ahead and slide it down in the approximate position to what the literature said. This is probably the most tedious and difficult part of this job. You think, oh, you're just putting a tube in the position. Should be a piece of cake. Yeah. So what I am probably going to do is just going to start with one here at the top. I'm just going to take my small zip tie, drop it, grab another small zip tie. I want to make sure that I actually get it around my tube here, or my thermostat. And go ahead and put that in position. I'm not going to tighten it down too much right yet because I want to be able to adjust this. So it's holding my line in place. Now I'm going to gently lift up my evaporator so I can kind of get to the back side and get to my other tube, my other thermostat here. I want to be careful because this will cut me. sure it gets in the same fin line, we'll say. I have it held in position now. I'm going to take another zip tie. Alright, so we got that in place. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to push my tube down, thermostat tube down slightly as the image depicts. And I'm going to go ahead and pull my zip tie a little tighter. I'm going to trim off the excess. That way it doesn't interfere with me trying to put my back panel on. I'll do the same. I'm going to tighten the top and then trim off the excesses of the zip tie. Alright, so that's good there. Now with our other one, I'm actually going to do it in reverse order because there's a clamp that holds our thermostat in place. So I need to make sure I have enough line based on where I start to put this at that it can still be in the right position. So I am going to put my thermostat behind my evaporator, push it down, raise my evaporator up, clamp my thermostat in place knowing that it won't stay there, and then now I'm going to bend my thermostat gently to start to feed it over so that way I can get it into position. So we're going to go ahead and just gently twist. That looks like about as far over as we're going to feel like I can put this. So it's like so I'm going to go ahead with my first zip tie. I'm going to fasten the top portion in just to help me act as another hand. And like the last one, I'm not going to tighten it down. It's a little loose, but it will hold it in place. Now I can go ahead and feed the rest of it down and then we'll say attach it at the bottom here. So this one here is a little bit more difficult than the last one. All right. So we got it in position. Got my zip tie. Making sure that it definitely goes around the thermostat, or else it won't hold it. Alright, so we got that in place. I'm going to go ahead and tighten it down a little bit, not all the way, because I don't want to tighten these down until I actually have my evaporator mounted. So I'm going to go ahead and get my screws for the mounting the evaporator. That way, with this loose, I can feed more down if I need to in order to move my evaporator and I don't damage anything. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and mount our evaporator in position. Be gentle not to damage anything. So, don't want to tighten that one down all the way. That way it leaves me a little bit of room to adjust my other ones, or move the evaporator, line up the other holes. Alright, so now I can go ahead and tighten up those two zip ties and trim them. Since I have everything in position, I don't need to adjust our evaporator anymore. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull them tight. Don't need to over tighten or pull them too hard. Alright, so that's all in position. Now I have my little foam gasket that's still here. I'm going to retuck around here. I was able to save some of this the tape that was on there. I'm going to try to just adhere it with that. So, alright, so I got my foam tubing here. Basically, it just helps it run more efficiently. just wrapping it around my tubing. And then I'm going to go ahead and just try to fasten it back up to our tube. See if that's going to hold it or not. Wants to stick to my finger more than anything else. Alright, just Alright, so we got our tube in place. We can go ahead and attach our back panel at this point and complete assembly. Okay, we're going to go ahead and put our back panel on. At the bottom of our back panel there are two little, we'll say, upside down U's or N shapes that correspond to two kind of like pins or down at the by the bottom of our evaporator. So we're going to try to fit everything in here, which it doesn't want to cooperate yet. So we're going to put our N-shaped pieces on those little bins and push down. You'll know if you have it is whether or not you can close this up all the way. So we're going to go ahead and it just pivots up. If you didn't have it, there are little pins up here. It would be higher than them and it wouldn't clear them. So we have that in position. We can go ahead and grab our screws that we had to remove. We can go ahead and put our first screw on here to hold the panel in place. And then we have our bracket that's going to go at the top to hold everything else in place. All right, so we're going to put our screw here on the left. Just push our panel back in place. Just like that. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and push our crisper back in, close our drawers. Now we can close our fresh food door and charge the unit back up. Okay, so I have my scale here, I have my refrigerant tank. I'm going to go ahead and set it on here. So we got my refrigerant. I'm actually going to turn it. Disconnect my, put my gauges onto my refrigerant. I'm going to go ahead and open up my my refrigerant tank now. My gauges are still closed. So I'm going to then bleed out the air that's in my line here by just opening up on my gauges, and you'll hear a little. So now I know that it's pushed the refrigerant or the air out. Now I'm going to go to my scale here with my gauges. I'm going to try to hold everything as still as possible so I don't affect it. We need to put it's going to require to read my scale be 10.5 ounces of refrigerant. So with it as still as possible, trying to get to a good point.
Oh yeah.
Make sure the weight on my scale stops moving. I'm then going to zero it out. All right, so now that my scale has stopped moving, I'm going to go ahead and zero it out. Make sure it still stays at 0. Now I'm going to open my gauges and start letting refrigerant flow in. Like I said, we want to get 10.5 ounces of refrigerant. So we're at a whopping ½ ounce so far. 1 ounce and almost done. So, all right. So as of right now, I have the gauges off. We're at the proper refrigerant requirement for our new system. So we're going to go ahead at this point, disconnect our gauges, and shut off our refrigerant, and finish reassembling the unit. All right. So we're just going to disconnect our gauges. You'll hear a little, just like you would take off when you're pumping up your bike tire. Like that. There's nothing you can do to prevent it. We have our cap up here. We're going to go ahead and reinstall our cap. Just a secondary protectant to a leak. So that's on there now. Now we can disconnect from our refrigerant, put up our panels here, and then just tell the customer to monitor. Okay, I'm going to shut off my refrigerant, and then I'm going to go ahead and remove my gauges. You can hear the same thing. Go ahead and take that off, and then I can go ahead and shut off my scale. We can clean these components up because we no longer need them. All right, we're going to go ahead and put our, I want my sound dampener in position. I'm tall enough that I can see where the screw holes are in order to line everything up. We have 2 screws. For you vertically challenged technicians, you'll probably need a step stool. But luckily the mailman in my neighborhood was a tall gentleman, so I have height. So that's there. Now we can put our metal bracket back on. So we're going to go ahead, I'm just going to put it in position. I'm not going to tighten anything down. I'm going to start with the 2 screws up here. So that way it will hold my bracket up and it doesn't fall and hit me in the head. And I'm just going to tighten them in just slightly, just so that way I know they're in there and nothing will fall on me. Now I can open up the doors, get the ones that go in from the bottom, which I'll do right now. So we have both open. I'll start in the middle on this one. There's a hole here, and then I can slide my bracket. I'll tighten it down. I'll go into the one here on the right. And our final screw. That's tight. That's tight. That's tight. And I can tighten up the 2 in the front now. Go ahead and close the doors. Alright, feeling cold. That's good. So doors are closed. I'm going to go ahead and grab our cosmetic cover. I'm going to go ahead and start with the top. Slide up. Give it a nice gentle tug. Make sure it's in position, which it is. Now we can go ahead and put our shelving back in. All right, open up our fresh food compartment. Now we can put all of our shelving back in. Got my basket. That's there. Now we can just go ahead and close the door. All right, so the last step is to put a sticker on our serial number here. It tells us how much refrigerant was in there. I'm going to put the new sticker in position with the new amount of refrigerant in there. That way, if anybody else works on the unit, they know the proper amount to charge it with. We can close our freezer, and we can adjust the controls back to a normal setting, and our job is complete. Thank you for watching another quality in-home diagnostic video brought to you by ApplianceVideo.com.